I was in a momentary panic there for just a second or two. I couldn't find my glasses. They were in a different pocket. Lynn and Carolyn are not supposed to be with us today, but here they are. They were supposed to be in Branson, Missouri, but their traveling partners, Buddy and what's her name? Shirley, got COVID. They found out on Thursday and had to cancel their trip. So we pray for Buddy and Shirley. They're fine folks. We're looking this morning at an old familiar Bible story. Let's hear it again, afresh and anew, from John chapter 6. John chapter 6, we shall pick it up at verse 1. After these things, Jesus has had a very busy day and a lot going on. And the writer picks it up by saying, after these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great multitude followed him, because they saw the miracles which he did on them that were diseased. And Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. And the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he saith unto Philip, when shall we buy bread that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, there is a lad here, which hath five barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? And Jesus said, make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place. So the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them which were set down, and likewise the fishes as much as they would. When they were filled, he said unto his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be left, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Wow. Summertime is just about over. That is, according to the calendar. Not tomorrow, but next Monday is Labor Day. Labor Day weekend. Summer has been fun. It's been fun to be outdoors with our family and enjoying the cookouts. I'm sure every one of us in here has had a cookout of some kind this year. But after Labor Day, traditionally will be time for a cookout. Fun, picnics, beach, all that. But after Labor Day, traditionally at least, the picnics are over. John chapter 6, that I just read a portion from, is a story of an outdoor picnic. See if you can visualize this scene in your mind. This is a scene that to me has a lot of color. It's a mountainous slope, and the slope is covered with green grass. That grassy slope leads all the way down to the blue ocean. It's a beautiful sight. But beyond the sight of the color of the grass and the blue of the ocean is the color of the clothing of the people on that hillside. People from all over the world that day are on that hillside, because it was required of every Jew, at least who lived within a certain vicinity, a certain radius of Jerusalem, to attend the Passover. And there were people from all over the world who'd make a once-in-a-lifetime journey to that Passover feast, and there were people from all over, and the colorful robes, the garbs that they wore, the various turbans. It was a very multicolored scene on the mountain slope that day. And a large group of people, 5,000 men, not counting the women and the children perhaps. The reason they're there, they have been following somebody who's very special. And they have been watching this very special person whose name is Jesus do some miraculous things. And as the miraculous things have been conducted, the crowd has grown and grown until it reached about 5,000 men. Not only have they been seeing some miraculous things, they have been enjoying each other's company, slapping each other on the back, talking, renewing acquaintances, being introduced to new people. It's quite a scene. And they are seeing things that nobody has ever seen before. The blind being made to see. The lame caused to walk. Demonically controlled people being restored to sanity. That's what they've been seeing all day long. They even saw a guy who, let me get to that yet. But it's now late in the day. And the human body can only take so much excitement, so much drama, so much new things that the mind has difficulty to absorb. And they became tired and no doubt hungry. In spite of what they've already been witnessing all day so far, they're about to witness one of the greatest things that human eyes have ever seen. It's not done yet. They're about to witness a miracle on a grand scale. A multitude of people are about to be fed with a handful, a meager provision. What is that meager provision? It's the lunch of a child. This miracle was so impressive that all four of the gospel writers record this miracle. It's the only one of all the miracles of Jesus that all four gospel writers recorded. And it's also the only miracle that was performed before such a large audience. Notice, first of all, the seeking multitude. Now, Jesus is popular at this particular point because of his healing power, the ability that he has to cast away any kind of disease. You know, that's kind of true today. People will still flock today to a doctor that seems to have a special gift. Why, even today, just try to get in to see Dr. Abdullah. And if you can get in to see him, be prepared to wait to see him. I got mad one day and walked out. I did. I just couldn't take it anymore. Try to get in to see your eye doctor. You know what they told us at Eye Guys here not long ago? You be prepared for a 3-hour wait when you go to Eye Guys. That's what they're telling people now. Doctors with special gifts. People still flock to them. I was in there one day this week. The room was the parking lot. I had to search for a parking place. There was only one left. Luckily, I got that one. But the audience in the waiting room was filled wall to wall with people. People flocked to Jesus in that same way. In that day, as I told you, there were crowds near Jerusalem because of the Passover. There were people everywhere you turned that particular day. And Jesus and his disciples had been involved with people all day long. And they also grew tired from a day of hard labor dealing with people. So they decided to go to Jesus decided to take them to an isolated area. What ordinarily would have been isolated out of town. But the multitudes followed. There was no privacy for them. It's a terrible thing to be lonely. But it's equally as bad, and maybe worse, to have so many following you that you have no private life of your own. That was the cause and the setup with Jesus that day. And some of that seeking multitude thought that perhaps he's a magician. He's just doing sleight of hand with these things. These people, this has been set up. Some people may have thought that. Others thought that he was just a clever physician. And some people were in the crowd because they enjoyed a good show. And some just maybe were there because they liked the entertainment of it. Some followed the crowd because they just wanted to be where everybody else was. That's similar to our modern day American culture. Multitudes of Americans today are looking for entertainment. Others looking for a clever political leader who can cure all of our economic ills, like health care. Give us free health care, like money in our pocket and peace in the world. Looking for those kinds of things. But very few of us are looking for healing of our souls. Very few of us in America are looking for cleansing from sin. Very few of us in America are looking diligently and seeking for fellowship with God. Question. Are you among the seeking multitudes today, looking for everything else under the sun except the Lord? That was a seeking multitude. But we learned a lesson here of the unlimited resources of God. Secondly, Jesus not only saw the multitudes of people, but he saw their need. Let me ask you, you're surrounded by people. There are people everywhere. Sometimes they're in the way. Sometimes there's just too many people. But do you see the need, the spiritual need that those people have? He saw not just the spiritual need that day, he saw their physical need. And he turned to his disciples and asked, what can we do to take care of their need at this point? Now those disciples, they could see the problem too. They probably, as they filtered themselves through that large audience, they heard people talking, man, wish we'd have brought something to eat. Wish there was a 7-Eleven nearby or Casey's or something like that. They didn't have the faintest idea about how to cope with the situation. They didn't have a solution. I want to ask you, why did they not have a solution to the problem that day? Think about it. Think about who they have been following all this time. Think about everything they have already seen. Well, this is the person at whose birth the angels sang. They've been following the person that they saw change water into wine. They've been following a person who healed a nobleman's son from long distance. They actually saw him heal a man who'd been lame for 38 years. They've been following him all this time and they don't know what to do. You know what he wanted from them at this point? Very simple. He wanted those disciples to have a simple trust in him and who he was and say, Lord, we don't have the ability, but we believe you have the ability to solve this situation. They had watched him perform all of these miracles. Surely he can provide bread for these people. But the disciples were helpless. They looked at the crowd and saw impossibility. They looked at the problem and not the Lord. Don't we act the same way sometimes? Here we are believing that God has unlimited resources. Here we are believing and preaching and teaching that God's grace is sufficient no matter the need. Then what do we do when our own personal problems arise? We look at our own resources and say, I don't have enough, instead of looking to Jesus who has unlimited resources. And we wring our hands and worry until we make ourselves sick. Haven't all your needs been met so far? The disciples that day saw and learned another great lesson. They saw the unlimited resources of God. Question for you. Do you see Jesus Christ as the answer today to every human need in our sin-sick American culture? Can he solve every problem that we have if we allow him to do so? Yes, he can. So thirdly, notice something else. Notice the disciples' responsibility. Verse 10, Jesus said, make all the people to sit down. And they did. Groups of 100, groups of 50, 150, so on and so forth. There's a lesson there. When God does something, he does it in an orderly fashion. What did Paul say about the work of the church? Let everything be done decently and in order. Then Jesus, after the people had sat down in an orderly fashion in groups, Jesus took the bread and fish that a little boy seemed willing to donate. And there's a theological question that arises at this point. The Bible says he blessed it and he broke it. Now, this is a matter of your own personal interpretation as to how you view what happened next. They had 12 baskets. Did Jesus, as he broke that bread and fish, did it multiply into such a degree that it continued to multiply and fill those baskets? Or when he blessed it and broke it, were the baskets miraculously filled? And then as it was distributed, did the baskets not decrease in the number, in the amount of fish and bread until everybody was served? So there's a deep theological question and discussion at this point. And your viewpoint is as good as anybody else's at that point, because we do not know. But he broke the bread, and it multiplied enough to feed the entire multitude. Now, have you ever thought about this? Imagine, and I've chuckled about this all week since I decided what I was going to do. Imagine the fish story that little boy went home to tell his parents that day. I can just see it now when he walked in the door. Son, did you eat your lunch? Yeah, I did, and so did everybody else. 5,000 people ate my lunch. You know, I wonder if that little boy got disciplined from his parents for making up such a fish story. Everybody, 5,000 men ate my lunch. That couldn't have happened. Come here and get a spanking for lying. What about that little boy when he went home? Oh, the disciples went through the crowd, passed that food out to all those people. You know who the most impressed people were that day? The crowd, there's so many people around, they can't see and tell everything that's going on. They just know they got hungry, they just know they got fed. But the most impressed people on the hillside that day were those disciples, because they knew where that food came from. I can hear them murmuring as they make their way through the crowd. Did you see what he did with 5 little fish and 2 pieces of bread? Did you see what he did? As a lesson, those disciples' responsibility to receive something from Jesus and give it to others is our responsibility too. We receive from Jesus, but it's our responsibility to be a blessing to other people. Question for you this morning. As you work your way through life, through all the difficult circumstances, things you have to deal with, are you being a blessing to other people? Are you being let's refine the question a little more. Are you being a spiritual blessing to other people? Nextly, notice something else. Not only was there this disciples' responsibility, but this feast that 5,000 men, not counting women and children, this feast that they enjoyed that day was prepared by God. This event on the grassy mountainside was more than just a picnic. It was more than just a snack to tide them over until they get home. It was a feast prepared by the very hand of God. This is a miracle that looks forward to that time in heaven when by God's own hand we will be fed at the marriage supper of the Lamb. You ever notice this? That when the meal was over, the disciples worked back through that crowd and they gathered up the leftovers. Now get this. There was more left over after 5,000 had eaten than they had to begin with when they started. They started off with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now they got 12 baskets full left over. You know why 12 baskets? Each of those 12 disciples have a little strap over their shoulder. Remember, this is a traveling band of disciples. And on that strap is a small basket that they carry their personal belongings, maybe something to eat for the next 2 or 3 days that they're going to be on the road. For the next several days, they ate out of that basket. remembering where it came from whose hand it came, and how they came to get it. It was an awesome, amazing miracle that lingered in their mind to the degree that the four gospel writers all wrote this story. The Lord multiplied the loaves and fishes until every man and woman in the audience was completely satisfied. Lesson: His supply is never, ever exhausted. He not only meets our physical needs, but He satisfies our soul and our spirits of His children. One last thought. What is the significance of this particular miracle? This story teaches us that Jesus is the bread of life. Without Him, your soul will die. That's the theological implication of it. It is He alone who can satisfy the hunger of the souls of the multitudes around you and I today. It is He alone who can satisfy the soul of a human being. The poet said it like this: friends all around me are trying to find what the soul yearns for by sin undermined. I know the secret. I know where 'tis found. Only true happiness in Jesus abounds. In conclusion, when the picnic was over that day, when the picnic on the hillside was over, that crowd turned and walked away. They got what they wanted. They got what they needed. But they failed to receive the most special thing that was on the hillside that day. They failed to receive the spiritual blessing that Jesus wanted to give them. Jesus wanted to save their souls. He offered Himself to them and showed them what He could do for them. That's not what they wanted. They wanted a material blessing. They wanted the physical blessing of the fulfillment of the body's needs. But they didn't really want the presence of God in their lives. I think that's where we are in America this morning. What do you want? What are you seeking today? Now think about that for just a moment. What are you seeking today? The answer to that reveals a lot about you at this particular point in your life.